Hey guys, Craig and Mike from Year Now, and we're going to talk in this video about privilege. Mike wants to talk about it, so I'll let him get started.
It's really topical, and the context in which it gets used is that human beings, individuals, carry with them privilege, and therefore their opinions are less meaningless.
Here's mine.
As a lot of these ideologies have this built-in control that I have an opinion and no one that opposes me can oppose it because they're not allowed to, because they don't have it's not the right to speak, but the authority on the matter because of the sort of the identity of the person they are. So a feminist will say, I don't know, just like all men something, 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 and if any man ever tries to say I'm wrong, then he can't say that because he hasn't lived a female life. And there's merit to that, to be honest.
He doesn't know the female experience.
So, yes, and so therefore he can't critique me. But then worse than that, if a female tries to critique her, she might say, you've internalized misogyny, or you're wealthy, or something about her, something about you're religious, or something that restricts her from critiquing someone's ideology. Hence the ideology has this built-in mechanism that it can go on forever and ever and ever. It's like Teflon, yeah, that's right. Yeah. Everything just slides off. And that's
dangerous.
Bloody dangerous, yeah, right.
Because once you're in it, how do you get up?
But just good call. Just the philosophy of privilege, though. I'm trying to be as independent as I can. I've got an issue with just the way the word works. So, like, if I take a coin, keep me honest here. If I take a coin and I flip it 100 times, and 99 times it comes up heads, 1 time it comes up tails, we would talk of chance or probability. We wouldn't yet say lucky or unlucky, because we don't know whether heads or tails is good. So if heads is bad, then it's unlucky, but we haven't ascribed a value to heads or tails yet.
Yeah.
So let's say I toss a coin. Every time it comes up heads, I give you $1. Every time it comes up tail, you give me $1, and it comes up heads 99 times. Then we would say Craig is lucky because you got the benefit.
Yeah.
And so we have to accept that having money is good and not having money is bad, and that allows us to use the term luck. But then we take that concept a step further and we try and say that a person has privilege, and we must necessarily come up with a meta-ethical definition of good to be able to use the term privilege. So, for example, if sitting close to this thing over here is good, then I'm privileged and you're unprivileged. Yeah. If sitting close to that thing over there is good, then you're privileged and I'm unprivileged. So we can't use the term privilege without
assuming a good.
Yeah, bringing good is hard. Like, what is the good life? So if we take some really simple examples, living a long period of time, like live as long as you can, don't die young. Yeah. Right? That's a nice, simple, that's women. Women live longest.
Yeah.
So you would say that they have privilege. So we might say, all right, education. Being educated is a nice, simple example of good. It's women again. Women are the most educated. In the modern times, women are most educated.
Have more degrees.
Have more degrees, yeah, certainly get better grades at school. They outpoint us in education almost across the board, except for things like, I think maths is one, but engineering. STEM.
Yeah.
Good call, STEM, yeah. Or we might say another thing, like being the victim of a violent assault, or being the victim of violence is a bad thing. But any way you look at it, in the reported stats to the police, murder, violence as assault, is men get assaulted much more, but sexual assault and kidnapping, women get assaulted more. So that's more balanced, 50-50. Yeah. But either way, if we're just looking at it...
Me point out, you're not saying we need to get the violence 50-50.
No, we need to get violence 0-0-0-0. Yeah. Forever, like so, but
because I know there's probably going to be a couple of birds watching this who are going, so you're saying that we should cop more murder, and it's like, no, Jesus,
that's the mental gymnastics.
Come on.
I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying we should get violence down, but I'm just in the concept of privilege. People say you have privilege if you're in the desirable position. Well, then you have to say what is desirable, and saying not being the victim of violence is a clear good in the world, and so it's hard to say who has privilege and who doesn't. African American females have a life expectancy of 35, really? and the
you say
serious
African Americans.
Did I say females? Trans women.
Okay.
Trans women. Sorry, retraction.
So is that
African Americans? Trans.
See, now this is confusing. Is it going from woman to man?
Born a man, lives his life as a woman.
Okay.
Seriously, life expectancy of 35. That's fucking. I'd be dead by now. And the leading cause of death is murder. The most likely thing you are to die of is to be murdered. So that's obviously, like, any way you look at it, that's a classification with a human classification that has big problems with privilege. That's very unprivileged. If you were to stand in John Rawls' original position, you wouldn't choose to be in that position because you get fucked up like that. And I think the second leading cause is suicide. Like, you're not even getting anywhere near old age or cancer or anything that almost everyone else dies of. But we have to use this.
So don't chop your dick off.
Or you might. Anyway,
I'm just taking the piss.
I'll leave that.
Yeah, just leave it.
The
jab.
That's a nice, simple representation of people that clearly lack privilege. But in this more widespread use of it, and we say something like, here we go, I have to be really careful here. We have to say something like the classic white thing, whatever it is, like having a Mercedes and a tailored suit and a home and a mortgage and everything. Anyone that has that has privilege. Is there not therefore an assumption within that that the white life, like the European life, is the good life?
Yeah.
And if someone then says,
I've never thought of it that way.
or especially when you hear a white person say, oh, I feel so sorry for that group of people over there. They don't have the lifestyle that I covet, that I want. We must give them money. Geez, that's racist if it's based on race. But isn't that like seriously presumptuous? There may well be, for example, the Amish people who are white and who could, if they wanted to, go to Yale or Harvard or whatever you do when you want to be a successful white elite. I mean, they have all the laws and all the customs. Well, sorry, not customs, but all the laws in America that an Amish person can turn up and go to Harvard. But they choose to raise a barn and plough a field and wear a hat and shave a moustache but keep the beard long, and that's their friggin' choice.
Yeah.
And if you said to them, oh, I'm so sorry, I'm going to raise an appeal for you and money and I've got a Kickstarter project so we can buy you a Mercedes, they would say, dude, the point of us is we don't want a Mercedes or a Mennonite or something like that.
Yeah, right.
And too quickly we charge out into privilege and not think about how problematic our assumptions on the good life really are, because you can't use privilege without assuming the good life.
And then you make it like the classic white jock.
Yeah.
Is the good
Chad
life.
Thundercock is the Johnny Quarterback is what it is. Yeah, and it's like doll. So the other thing is the gender thing. We say it's such a crime, so fucking terrible that women don't have power or women don't have engineering positions. Yeah. Do they want engineering positions?
No.
So I've got a story on power, and whenever I think of power, everyone else has a story on power. Trump. I've got a different story. I think this is true. It might be false, but back during the Napoleonic Wars, there was an English Lord Spofington Wisbottom, or some English-sounding name like that, and he had 4 sons, and the youngest son was just incompetent. It was just useless. He was as useless as a glass door in an Outback toilet. There was nothing good about him, and so this lord went to his friend who was in the Royal Navy. He said, can you do my youngest son a favour and do me a favour and do my wife a favour? Give him a position in the Royal Navy. And he said, we'll give him the lowliest position as an officer that we can possibly give him. So this young son got a uniform, and his job on the boat was literally to stand out of the way and do nothing. Put your hand in your pockets, don't say anything, just keep out of the way, and technically you have a position in the Royal Navy, so your family has some esteem. And then the Battle of Trafalgar broke out, and Napoleon's fleet came over. I think this is right, isn't it? And Nelson, and anyway. Yeah. And the ships blew each other up, and he was an officer on board a ship, and he was the lowest ranked officer. And the captain and the first mate were standing one behind each other, and a French sniper up the mast managed to shoot them both with one shot, and that was the first 2 ranking officers gone. And then the 3rd ranking officer got washed overboard, the 4th ranking officer got hit by a cannonball, and the shrapnel from that cannonball killed the 5th highest ranking officer. And all of a sudden, this useless, incompetent 13-year-old boy who was just told to stand with his hands in his pockets and say nothing had command of a complete man of war ship, and he was supposed to win a battle with. And all the men on board looked at him and said, sir, what do we do? And he said, I want mummy, I don't know, and burst into tears. And the thing is, when the ship got back to port, they marched him into a tribunal, found him guilty of dereliction of duty, and hung him by his neck. And he's dead. And he never lived, and he died at 13, pissing his pants, calling for his mum, and they didn't even give his mum time to come down. They just killed him then and there because he didn't do his duty. And I think that's a really good story of power, because when you get into power, there's a cost. If you wear the uniform and you don't perform your duty, they'll kill you.
Yeah.
They'll kill you. And it's crazy, but I understand why the Royal Navy did what it did. It can't make exceptions. If you're out there on that boat in war and the entire defence of all of England rests on you making a good decision, the penalties have to be really bad to keep it honest. And so we talk of power, and we say, like, whatever class should have more power. But we don't seem to discuss the cost of power. We assume that power is good so quickly. All people should have power. But we don't talk of responsibility. And I think that particular story is a really good one about how friggin' responsible you have to be, or how costly it is to obtain a powerful position. And even in my own job, and I've got a pretty powerful position and things, but I could be a lot more powerful. You know why I don't? Because I don't friggin' want to be. I don't want that level of scrutiny, and I don't want weekly audits, and I don't want people breathing down my neck, and I don't want to have to submit accountability reports to all these people who have whatever politics and prejudices to come after me as they want. I choose a reduced level of power because that fits well. Now, I get that doesn't work for the African-American trans woman thing. Like, she's just got to get into some sort of safety any way possible, and any amount of powerful is good for that. I'm not trying to make my principle work at the extremes. And similarly, someone that just has like some global elite whose name we don't even know, and they just control the world, like the Wizard of Oz, you know, pulling. I'm not saying it works at that angle, but down in the common area, when we talk all the time of privilege, I don't think we consider, and especially around power, we don't consider how difficult the concept of power is, because we don't consider the responsibility that comes with it. And we use this concept of privilege way too readily and way too easily, and we look like apex theory. We look at only the good bits of it, and we don't look at the bad bits of it. And we're saying to some women, you should be powerful, you ought to be powerful, or I have sympathy for you because you don't have power. But maybe she understands a little more about power than the people that are saying this, and maybe she doesn't want to get hung by a neck because she couldn't say the right thing at the right period of time.
Always made, different choices, and now, what do you call it? You get accused of internalized misogyny because you want to have children.
Yeah, and that's like, just a choice.
But Jesus, you're attacking people's preferences now.
Yeah, sure, yeah,
you should want something else. I mean, that's just completely illiberal. I don't even know where to start. It's just. But like you were saying, the problem is you can't critique them because they'll just deflect it and say
your identity forbids you from understanding
it. Yeah, and then even the people within their group, so they reject you because you're the wrong identity. But then even the people with the right identity, they've got all of that. If a black guy criticizes the African American community, they call him an Uncle Tom, and just automatically ignore him. And it's just like, well, fuck. How do you even get into that place in the first joint? And then how do you get out of there?
Into the ideology, yeah. And then once
how do you get in? It's like, how do you get up? But how do you get in the first place? Fuck.
So that's an exhaustive explanation of my theory on privilege. I'm not saying... Definitely, I think privilege... Actually, I heard another really good story. A friend of ours, mutual friend of ours, said he was on the train home from work and he pulled into a station out Armadale Way, which for those who don't know is a bit of a rough area. And there would have been some commotion on the train, and the police were standing at the entry places for all the doors. And when the doors opened, a police officer went in, and the police officer looked up and down the train and then saw him and said, "Sir, is there a drunk person in this train being disruptive?" And he said, "No, there isn't." And the police said, "Thank you," and went to the next train.
Yeah.
And he knew they picked him because he was a white guy in a suit. Like, there was a train full of people, and they just looked for the whitest guy in the most expensive-looking suit and thought, well, he must be the oracle of truth in this particular train.
But
asked him.
I think that's natural, yeah, of course it's natural. Like, people are naturally prejudiced. I'm prejudiced. People, you can try and
overcome it.
Yeah, you can, but I think it's always there because
that's true.
Like,
there's no one that isn't prejudiced.
If you say something general, that group of people are generally lazy, and then somehow people think, oh well, I'll bring up one specific exception to the rule, and that should overthrow the whole rule.
That's just bad statistics. But Harvey Weinstein could have been sitting there in a suit on that train down to Armadale Line, and they would have asked him, and that would have been the wrong thing to do. So
but I mean, it's like you don't want to get wound up about being prejudiced. People are always prejudiced.
You don't want
natural.
But like we were saying in the postmodernists, you can act in good faith and try as best you can to come out to the best conclusion you can try, and simply looking for a white guy all the time and saying, well, he's the smartest guy on the train, especially given what we know about female education rates. There is an argument that, I certainly do think that privilege exists, and it's easiest at the extremes, like the people that have absolutely no privilege whatsoever, and they're just, the thing that they're born is just fucked because society's not going to make the the life that they can get out of that.
Yeah.
Because some people are trying to, and then the other ends where the people that no matter what they do, they're going to be all right. Privilege,
Yeah.
I think, works at those extremes, but it's becoming very confusing down in, like, I think we kind of are, like, at least in Australian context, in the middle here, where these weapons get thrown at you, which assume a good life, and in the particular case of power, don't understand the costs of power, and that giving a person power isn't always going to make them happy, i.e. the boy on the boat.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't really buy into the privilege idea at all. Like, probably zero. I think it's dangerous to to even start identifying with it.
So the son of a global elite that will inherit $100 billion on his 18th birthday, not privileged?
No, look, I don't think the world is perfectly just, and I don't think it's perfectly liberal. But for, like you're saying, the average bloke, like, I can't force people to buy products. They have to want to. So I'm stuck. I have to be liberal amongst liberal people. I have to be free amongst free people. And so, I don't really look around and see a lot of people who are getting benefits from their position, I wouldn't say. Even if somebody gets a job through contacts, I mean, that's natural. That always happens.
Even at the extremes, like...
Oh, yeah. Well, at the extremes, I'm sure it happens. But
yeah, it does.
I'm talking about...
I think you have to concede that.
I'm talking about the run-of-the-mill, average bloke.
Well, then we agree, yeah. The average bloke, like...
Average person. Don't even start sure, if you see somebody who's just basically using force of law to get wealthy, get pissed off about it. But, I mean, that's just really rare. And if you're going to start, if somebody says, oh, well, I'm a black Australian, I'm unprivileged, I mean, fuck, you're getting yourself into psychological territory you won't come out of. Don't even go there. It's dangerous.
You mean like welfare dependent? You're getting yourself welfare dependent? Is that what you're saying?
No. Just, you get people nowadays who go, well, just because I'm not white, I'm unprivileged. I should be getting paid more. I should be... And it's just like, no, well, that's probably the market rate. And that's just life. That's life, and you need to deal with life rather than saying, oh, I'm underprivileged, and then you get yourself into that psychological space.
Yes.
You're fucked.
Yeah, right.
Don't even play around with that.
I agree with that. Yeah.
You'll get burned.
It looks like water, but really it's poison. Don't drink.
So, and then you're fucked because you're going to think you're going to change the world based on your ideas of privilege.
You get a chip on your shoulder.
You're going to have a big chip on your shoulder, and you're going to be ineffective. You're not going to change a single damn thing that's going to make you better. Yeah,
see, I was just thinking then, those really good schools, every city's got those, the Ivy League sort of schools.
Yeah,
they're full of problems. Those kids' parents have all got problems. Well, it's a big generalisation, but a lot of those kids' parents have got problems. There's issues there too. Like they say in that book, The Outsiders, it's rough all over. Doesn't matter whether you're a social or a greaser. Everyone's got problems. Yeah. They're just different sorts of problems. But I agree with that in the middle. Like, at the extremes, I definitely think there's some sort of privilege, but we talk too much about it in the middle. Yeah.
I mean, like the way government works is really inefficient sometimes. And there was like a bloke in Canada, his local government was going to build a little flight of stairs in this park. And he had heard that they'd given the contract or whatever to some bloke who was going to charge 65 grand for it. And so he just said, no, I'll build the stairway myself. He built it for $500.
Mm-hmm.
And you think, well, that's a good example of somebody who's earning 60 grand for doing fuck all. And that should piss you off.
Oh, I see. Yeah. So you mean that story is simply? I thought it was going to be a great immoral, but $500. Yeah.
He's charging 65,000, and it's like.
So what's that got to do with privilege?
Well, you could say that's privilege because now you're doing a job that should cost $500, but you're making 65,000 because
that's just
you've got contacts with the government.
Yeah. Okay. Because of contacts with the government.
So I think people should get fucked off about that, and you should try and improve your local government and all of that. And I think it's always going to be a fact of life that there's going to be things like that happen, and you got to try and stop them. But most people exist.
A tricky bastard, and that perhaps governments shouldn't intervene in absolutely everything all the time.
Yeah.
But certainly, people are born into situations which is really, really tough for them. Like, race and gender doesn't have to come into it; it can just be who your parents are. Kardashian kids would be an example of that. Like, I wouldn't swap with Prince William or Prince Harry. I wouldn't want Prince William's life.
No, fuck that.
No, fuck that. Big time. Yeah, exactly. People say he has privilege. I don't know that he necessarily does.
Yeah, he's got a lot of responsibility and he's got nowhere to go. Like, that's
no choice. I didn't even know if he got to choose. Do you reckon he got to choose his wife? Do you reckon he could just go out to the marketplace and say, I mean, he did pretty well.
I'm sure he had 4 or 5, and I don't think he would have complained about either of them.
He would have. He would have had like a small selection of people that he could choose from, or jobs that he could do, or if he decided he wanted to be a DJ down the local club or something, the Queen would have said, "Not in your life. We are not amused." All right. That's exhausted privilege for me. You got more?
No, it's I struggle with that idea. It's just like
you got to know. It's assuming that you know what the good is, and it's like the story on the boat. You don't. The power comes with a price, and we don't understand it all before we apply the label privilege.
It's like if I'm watching YouTube and somebody brings up privilege, I just sort of.
That's another thing as well. It's one of those. It's an indicator of someone that's an arsehole and is just gonna. It's one of those. It's an indicator of virtue signaling. That's what I'm trying to say. Yeah.
Like they should always earn more money. They should always have better shoes and live in a better house. And it's just like
it's a trap, like you were saying.
Everybody has to work for what they have. It's just life, and life is a bit tough sometimes. And just get on with it.
In the middle, I agree with that. At the extremes, that's a different story.
Yeah.
We're done.
Well, I suppose you would say like a rich person's son. You say this rich person earned their money. And they have a son, and you're born into that life. Like in one sense, yeah, that's privilege. But then you got to understand that that person's experience is going to be defined by that, and it's going to be a different way through life. And it's not It's not necessarily privilege. It might be that you're in a bubble, and that bubble never gets popped, and you don't really learn anything. And
like when you hear Paris Hilton whinge because of some bloody thing that she thinks is terrible about her life, like she had to have cold toast for breakfast or something like that. And you think, oh, but maybe for her, cold toast is really terrible or something like that. She's never had it before.
That's it. Your experiences have been sort of directed, and
I'm sure she'll get over it though.
I like cold toast actually.
Do you?
I sort of leave it in the toaster for a few minutes.
Oh,
so it's like really crunchy.
No, you're crazy.
It's good shit.
All right, you're in charge here. You're signing off.
Righto, guys. Subscribe, comment, share it, and hopefully you enjoyed it. Cheers, guys.
Okay.